Our brains don't want us to experience total darkness. I don't mean this in a poetic, metaphorical way. I mean literally. There are very few places in nature where it's even possible to blot out all illumination. Outside, even a moonless, overcast night can't shut out the light of the stars. But say you're determined, dead set on escaping the glow of our world, you could head underground. In a cave, you will find dark in the truest sense, a blackness unsullied by the least bit of natural light. Even
Hell no.
then,
Hell
alone
no.
in a cave without a moon or sun or flashlight, your brain will fight against
I'd be
it.
getting scared when I just go downstairs to get some food at like midnight. Screw a cave.
Dark. Mere hours into total darkness, humans start to hallucinate. You don't have to have a history of seeing things. Fully healthy, self-aware, otherwise lucid people will swiftly and dramatically start to hallucinate in true darkness. In 2004, researchers in Massachusetts blind...
Have you lot ever seen shit? Like, just in the dark? I think I definitely have. I've definitely mistaken like objects in my room or just around me for people or things that would usually scare you, but like nothing more.
Unfolded 13 participants for 96 straight hours, and yet the participants saw many things. Flashing lights, a rotating skull, illuminated trails following their arms. One woman said she saw a splotch of light, quote, in the exact form of Elvis Presley. Another woman sensed that she was standing in front of a mirror and was terrified by the sudden appearance of a green face with big eyes. A man said he saw full landscapes, trees, pebbles, running water, all in the absence of any light at all.
Hell no. What the hell?
In 2007, the German artist Marietta
That's
Schwartz
so much.
blindfolded herself for over 3 weeks. Scientists monitored her over this period,
3
during which she
weeks.
witnessed hallucinations as simple as leopard print and as complex as the opening credits to Star Trek. Scans of her brain indicated that she was not simply imagining these things, but actually seeing them. The hallucinations activating the same visual processing centers of her mind that she would use to see real leopard print or the actual opening credits to Star Trek. These
She gotta be a
experiences
fan.
happened within controlled laboratory environments, but over the course of human history and art, many more people have confined themselves to a much more isolated form of darkness. They too experienced their minds fight against the absence that confronted them. All of us.
Why does that look like... Look, wait. Why does that look like an RPG in the side? I'm not tripping, right?
Willingly or not,
Okay.
confront the dark every day. It is the bedrock of the universe, an absolute inevitability, a required element of life and death and rest and time, and yet we refuse to simply perceive the dark. Rather than sit within total absence, our brains spin imagined stimuli out into the void. After all, how could there truly be nothing there? Over the years, I've talked about the depths of the earth, the stillness of the cold, the unknowable reaches of our oceans. Each of these is merely an extension of the dark. That black, that abyss, that place we cannot see is not merely a fear, it is the fear, the place from which all others are born. I had a dream.
Chat, what do you think is more scary? The bottom of the sea or like the deepest cave? I have to go like the bottom of the sea. Just because bro, we don't even know like what's actually swimming under there still. There's so much shit we like have not discovered about the sea. There could be anything of any size.
Which was not all a dream. The bright sun was extinguished,
and the stars did wander darkling in the eternal space.
Okay. It's like some Elden Ring opening
In
credit scene.
November of 2021, a woman named Beatriz Flamini descended into a cave in the south of Spain. Her intention was to remain underground and isolated longer than any human in history. She almost did it.
Why though?
Flamini is
Who knows?
notable in her submission
Why
to the
though?
dark because of her general enthusiasm for the whole process. Despite helpers bringing her food and supplies, she specifically chose
Enthusiasm.
not to directly communicate with the outside world. No talking with others, no updates on current events. She would have a couple battery-powered lights, but no clock or externally updated calendar. She would not see another human face for 500 days. Because she didn't bring a mirror, she would not even see her own. She was, however, provided with a pair of GoPros. She would use these to record the whole experience. Remember these.
Chat, isn't like the whole premise of like you start to see shit in the dark is because essentially you are imagining things to entertain your brain. Like your brain is just trying to entertain itself. So it's seeking for something to focus on and therefore is like completely just creating things for no reason at all apart from just to gauge onto something.
Her fixations on dark and isolation and disconnection are unusual, but not wholly unique. The man she was attempting to take the record from was named Milutin Vjokovic. He was a Serbian scientist who spent 464 days in a row inside a
Oh my
cave.
god, that scared me. Thank you so much for the
Vjokovic had a
follow.
radio through which he could talk to people outside, but that communication did not spare him the effects.
Bro,
of
I
the
actually
dark.
got jump scared. I was like kind of getting tense into this video and I got jump scared. Oh, that's crazy.
He hallucinates. His hair grows long and ragged. He pulls out his own teeth.
Oh,
Or
hell
there's the
no.
French speleologist Michel Siffre. In 1962, he ventured into a cave.
Sorry,
for
I'm sorry for pausing, but like, how do you get enthusiastic by that? So the previous person you're trying to beat pulled his own teeth out from like, what I'm assuming insanity, right? So like, why? That's like the biggest hint you can ever get to say like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I should just be staying my ass at home, eating my own food, doing my own stuff, not spending time in a cave for like nearly a year, maybe even more. Yeah, people are just wild.
straight. A decade later, he returned to the dark for another 6. He found that his perception of time inevitably warped. Weeks after he entered the cave, he tried to mentally time 2 minutes, and it took him 5. Occasionally, he stayed awake for 36 hours in a row, though he didn't know it. When he was retrieved from the cave, he was surprised. Why are they pulling him out? Isn't he only halfway through? My psychological time had compressed by a factor of 2. When Flamini emerged from the cave in 2023 after a year and a half of residence, she seemed thrilled with her time. She told writer DT Max that her stay was excellent, unbeatable. She took a series of medical exams and all her vitals were normal. Her attitude seemed almost unbelievable. She hadn't been affected at all by her year in the dark. But the GoPros tell another story. The first thing they document is her loss of time. On day 38 of the experiment, she says to the camera, "I'm convinced that if I get past day 30, it's a done deal." Then the auditory phantoms enter the picture. She begins to hear things, or more specifically, she begins to hear a thing. This is not paranoia. This is not hallucinations, she whispers to her GoPros. If it's an animal, it's a big animal. She was always alone in the cave. To enter, one had to rappel down a 200-foot sheer drop, but she was convinced there was something there with her. 300 days in, Flamini breaks. She blames the router researchers had placed in the cave, says that it's sending out sonic waves that are giving her nosebleeds. She climbs out of the cave but stays confined to her tent at the entrance. Assistants replace the router. She goes back in. And the more she talks about the dark, the more her initial report, excellent, unbeatable, seems like an attempt to rationalize, maybe even repress.
She went out, so it's not like straight, no. I mean, I guess like give her some leeway because she spent almost a year there, but like she still went out into the bright, like into the light. So it's not like complete.
Her true experience. She later admits, I didn't exactly lose consciousness, but the darkness saps you of life. The solitude, the social uprooting, it consumes you. You eat, you down nutrients, but you consume yourself. Because of Flamini's brief exodus from the cave, she fails her record attempt. Vjelkovic's 464-day stay in the 60s still bests her, but I wonder how much the record matters to her now, how much importance she puts on the exact amount of time she spent in the dark. The cameras, the other scientists, they monitored how long she was down there, but Flamini experienced something different. A while ago I was born. A while ago I was going to visit Mongolia. There is no past, there is no future. Everything is present, everything is a while ago, and it's all brutal and strange. Michel Cifre was more blunt about his time in isolation in what he called the terrifying sensation of infinite space. He wrote, I now understand why in their myths people have always situated hell underground. And this is the language of the people most eager to explore the dark. Here's an obnoxious question for you. Can you see the dark? Well, is water wet? Can you see the dark? Say I have a room in my house without illumination. The door is open, but no light can make it past the threshold. Are we seeing darkness in that room? Or would it be more accurately described as an absence of perception?
I actually have a question, like, you spend so much time in the dark, do you start to forget faces? Because like for me, it's like, I feel like I start to forget faces after like a month. If I don't see them, unless they're like a routine in my life. If it's just like a person I've seen like a few or several times in my life, I will forget their face if I do not see them. Do you know what I mean? So like if you're isolated in the dark from everyone, at what point do you just like not remember anyone? Because it's got to be even more violent. Because like if she's hallucinating, it's a good guess to say like she's got other shit going on like that.
Answer for you, not one that would meaningfully change your experience of the dark. Semantical explanations can't contend with lizard brain fear instincts. But can you see the dark is a revealing question because it breaks down all the abstract language we so often use to talk about it into a single base anxiety. Here's how I would describe the fear of dark once you suck all the poeticism out of it. Either there is nothing there, or there is something there. That's it. That's all there is. Either the dark conceals something, or the dark reveals nothing. As a kid, I'd occasionally punish myself by reading some of the most frightening works of American literature ever published, the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark book series. They are, rightfully, most remembered for their illustrations by Stephen Gammell, inky works of absolute cruelty that elevated otherwise pretty benign, spooky stories. But there was one notable exception. On page 45 of More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz, there's a story called The Voice. It is 114 words long. I'm now going to read it to you in its entirety.
Yay.
Ellen had just fallen asleep when she heard a strange voice. Ellen, it whispered, I am coming up the stairs. Now I am on the first step. Now I'm on the second step.
Oh no, this is some schizo shit.
Ellen got scared and called her parents, but they didn't hear her and they didn't come. Then the voice whispered, Ellen, I'm on the top step.
Uh-oh.
Now I'm in the hall.
Uh-oh.
Now I'm outside your room.
No, I'm inside
Then
your
it
room.
whispered, I'm standing right next to your bed.
Nah.
And then, I've got you! Ellen screamed, and the voice stopped. Her father rushed into the room and turned on the light. Somebody is in here, Ellen said. They looked and looked. Nobody was there. This story ruined my goddamn life.
Okay.
I was particularly susceptible, I guess. My childhood bedroom was immediately at the top of a flight of stairs. I didn't close my door at night for some reason.
But like chat, most like the most logical explanation is she most likely has schizophrenia. Like that, I feel like that's like generally. I feel like that's a perfect example of schizophrenia. Maybe I don't know. I don't have it, but or psychosis or whatever the fuck. Like generally on some tweaking shit. Not normal.
And so instead, I would lay in bed and stare down the flight of stairs, darkness pooling at the bottom, and I would think about the two options. There's nothing there, or there is something there. This anxiety is leveraged throughout horror media. Most relevant to our previous discussion of Flamini and the Underground is Neil Marshall's 2005 classic The Descent, a film that lets the audience stew in the stress of its claustrophobic subterranean darkness for nearly an hour before revealing its cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. The composition of these before scenes is wonderfully minimal. Often, nearly the entire frame is left black. A single headlamp may provide some light, but only enough to highlight the surrounding dark. Many scenes are horribly rooted in their physical space, like the skin-crawling push through a tunnel.
I don't have like claustrophobia or anything, but these cave. Oh my god, bro! I could never fit through something like this. I have general fear of getting stuck in something like this. Just the stories you hear from it. Nah, you'd never catch me in a cave like this.
And yet, the film's refusal to further light the frame simultaneously abstracts the space. Everything outside the confines of this tunnel exists only as a void, an amorphous threat always on the verge of swallowing the characters whole. The Descent does have an easy escape for the viewer, though. For as tense as it is, we can reassure ourselves, never in a million years would I put myself in that position. That reassurance ceases to work when darkness envelops the domestic. This is why I couldn't shake Schwartz's The Voice. This is still where my most visceral fears manifest. Gerald's Game is a fairly middling Stephen King book that happens to contain one of the most electrifyingly scary scenes he's ever put to paper. The book centers on Jessie, a woman left handcuffed to her bed after her husband unexpectedly dies whilst preparing for coitus. Unable to escape the cuffs or leave the bed, Jessie is left.
Listen, I know you're trying to make it like, but saying it like coitus, you just ruined the vibe. You've ruined the vibe, bro. Coitus, bro. Nah.
Left alone in a cabin, too remote to call for help. As the book goes on, she flickers in and out of reality, mixing her present predicament with her life's previous traumas. And then she meets someone else. She passes out in the evening and wakes in the middle of the night, her arms stiff, her muscles cramping after hours of being handcuffed. She starts to talk to herself. How long can she go without food? How long can she go without water? And then she stops. Her eyes, which had been wandering aimlessly across the darkened room, locked on the far corner, where the wind-driven shadows of the pines danced wildly in the nacreous light falling through the skylight. There was a man standing there. Terror greater than any she had ever known crept over her. Her terror had blown her mind temporarily clean from wall to wall and ceiling to floor. No sound escaped her, not even the smallest squeak. She was as incapable of sound as she was of thought. She didn't black out, didn't even come close to it. But that mental emptiness and the total physical incapacity that accompanied it were worse than a blackout. When thought did attempt to return, it was at first blocked by a dark, featureless wall of fear. A man in the corner. It's absurd how many of my own childhood anxieties manifested as little more complicated than a man standing in the corner at night. A coat over a chair, a shadow across a bookshelf, a creak of the floorboards, all would near immediately become that most horrifying of apparitions, a man in the corner. And like I did, Jessie immediately tries to talk herself out of it. She's being crazy, she thinks. It's just the dark and moonlight and her own psyche manifesting horrors, but she doesn't believe her own rationalizations. She can feel him, slow waves of malevolence emanating from the corner of the room. Kiddie Horror Show's Anatomy, an indie game I've spoken about at length.
To be fair,
before,
I've had the same feeling before.
This same
just
anxiety.
like feeling someone's
the
there.
player, after wandering around a cold, dark house, finds themselves trapped in the bedroom, and the narrator intones, "It is here, in the bedroom, that we are at our most vulnerable. Anything might stand beside us, watch us, keep us company until dawn, and we would never perceive it. We can only pray that the house will not let such things carry on while we sleep. It is here that the house is most likely to betray us." There is a unique menace that a room can hold in the dark, particularly when suddenly awoken into it. The ordinary turned uneasy, familiar corners now posing a single dreadful question. Is there nothing there? Or is there something there? It's the same reason, and I'm embarrassed to even admit this, that I hate looking out windows at night. My body tenses up at the idea that the nothing outside could suddenly hold something. A man standing in the corner.
I'd be on the complete opposite vibe though. Like, if I ever feel the presence of something or someone outside or anywhere, like, I go investigate straight away. Because I'm like, here's the logic, right? I know my mind is playing games on me. So I've got to go prove my mind that nothing is like as I think it is, so I can reassure myself and go back to sleep. The problem is, when I'm wrong, I'm going to be really wrong. So, you know, but I haven't been wrong yet, so do as I say, not as I do.
In Reed's book, I'm Thinking of Ending Things, the protagonist describes an incident in which she awoke in the middle of the night, looked out her window, and realized someone was standing outside. A tall man, so tall in fact that his head was above the top of the window. But despite this, she is sure he can see her. In Anatomy, the narrator analogizes windows as the eyes of a house, says it's hard to shake the feeling of being watched when encountering the lightless windows of a tall, dark manor. They describe the windows as eyes as gazing out at their surroundings, but at night, when I'm alone, I can't help but feel that they've turned inward, that it is now the dark that watches me through each window.
Everyone, meet my boyfriend.
Oh my goodness.
The protagonist of I'm
Exact.
Thinking of Ending Things watches the tall man outside for a long time, maybe an hour, and then, unexpectedly, subtly, he waves. The wave changed everything. It had an effect of malice, as if he were suggesting I could never be completely on my own, that he would be around, that he would be back. After that, I thought it would reoccur, that he would appear again, watching, but it didn't. Not at my window, anyhow. But I always felt like the man was there. The man is always there. Back in Gerald's game, Jessie continues to stare at the shadows in the corner forming the shape of a man. Her mind untethers. Things especially changed in the dark when a person was alone. Who knows what some men and women have seen in the hour of their solitary deaths? Is it so hard to believe that some of them may have died of fear, no matter what the words on the death certificates say? The shadow doesn't speak, but it leans forward into the moonlight out of deniability. It smiles. And something in Jessie's mind makes a decision. Some part of her brain senses that this dark is too deep, that any more time here will somehow break her irreversibly. A piece of her starts running for these circuit breakers in her head, racing against the panels of her psyche that have begun to smoke. That small piece of her mind throws the breaker because fear-induced unconsciousness is preferable to even one more second in that room with that man in the corner. There was an intolerably bright flash inside her head, and then the lights went out.
Damn.
The largest blackout in history happened on the 31st of July, 2012. It doubled the previous record, which just happened to have been set the day before. At about 2:30 a.m. on July 30th, an electrical line in India running from Bina to Gwalior tripped off. The line's failure immediately cascaded across northern India's grid. Plants in Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, Delhi, Uttarakhand, Jammu, Kashmir, and more all went down.
See, I thought this didn't seem familiar. I was like 2012. I was alive then. How did I miss out on this blackout? It's because I wasn't living in India.
In total, 300 million people lost power. Trains stopped on their tracks. Water treatment plants ceased functioning. Hospitals went dark. For most, the outage lasted less than a day. 80% had power back by that evening. Well, they did for almost 12 hours. On July 31st, a similar sequence of failures occurred, except this time it didn't stay confined to the northern power grid. Weakened from the previous day, the extreme load pulled down the northeastern and eastern grids as well, plunging literally 670 million people into darkness. That is, if you need further context, twice the current population of the United States. Infrastructure ground to a halt once again. Trains, hospitals, water, all kaput. In a true nightmare scenario, 200 workers were trapped in a coal mine in West Bengal. Their elevator to the surface suddenly non-functional. It cannot be overstated how much the advent of electrical lighting has changed our functioning as humans. Our pattern of sleep, formerly segmented into multiple shorter periods, has been artificially stitched into one extended rest.
Chat, I don't really know how I feel about the fact that we rely so much on electricity. Like, if it just went one day, we would be so fucked. Because we have, like, kind of entangled our entire lives around electricity working. Like, there would be an apocalypse scenario and it'd be just electricity, something that we live without for the majority of humans being existent.
Ability to define the night as an opportunity to redefine ourselves. We are no longer creatures built in parallel to the rising and setting sun. The lights only go out when we choose. But it's an impermanent change. Take away electricity, return a human to a day defined only by the sun and the moon, and their sleep will return to a pre-industrial schedule, 2 shorter sleeps separated by hours of gentle wakefulness. It is alarming how thin the line is between self-definition and submission to the schedule of the solar system. In India, in 2012, 500 million people suddenly returned to a dark beyond their choosing. It is one overloaded line and an interconnected series of power plants. In 2014, the Wall Street Journal reported on a leaked report from the U.S. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. the report detailed the vulnerabilities of the country's electrical system. Namely, even though the US has more than 55,000 electric transmission substations, a coordinated attack on just 9 of them could cause a coast-to-coast blackout. It would, quote, plunge the country into darkness for weeks, if not months. This exact situation is unlikely. Those 9 extra special substations are still classified, but not...
I bet they had to keep that information like quiet, because I just know there are some people out there, if they knew that, they would want to do it just because chaos. You know what I mean? People like chaos. Some people really like chaos to the extent that they just do not care.
Impossible. 2 years ago, only about an hour from where I currently live, someone fired about 100 rounds into a couple substations in Moore County, North Carolina. The attack took about 20 minutes and killed power for more than 40,000 people in sub-freezing temperatures. In 2013, a similar attack caused $15 million of damage in Coyote, California, though without a significant loss of power. In both cases, the perpetrators have not been found. Since 2022, at least 3 different neo-Nazi groups have been arrested after attempting to attack the US's power grid and cripple the country's infrastructure. But despite its fragility, it's easy to take that grid for granted when you consider how staggeringly wide we've spread the light. The darkness of the sky is measured on something called the Bortle scale. It goes from 1 to 9, and the higher the scale, the more light pollution you're experiencing, and thus the less able you are to see celestial bodies. Where I currently live is a Bortle 8 to 9, that is to say, very bright. And I can see some stuff. I can see the moon, and planets, and Orion occasionally. With a 20-minute drive, I could get to a Bortle 4, which reveals much more of the Milky Way. Striving for true darkness, though, is exceptionally difficult. Dark Sky International lists only 9 dark sky sanctuaries and a couple dozen dark sky preserves within the United States.
I can't like, the only way to get like full darkness in today's society is like one of those like isolation chambers, right? That's one of the only ways, because there's so much light pollution. Like, it's either that or you just wait for a blackout. But even then, it's like, I don't know.
I have, in fact, been to one. Craters of the Moon National Monument in Idaho contains about 1,000 square miles of land, several hundred of which are covered by the gnarled remains of what was fairly recently fresh lava. It is truly an unearthly landscape covered by jagged rocks, ash-black hills, and massive hollow tubes under the ground that once contained flowing magma. It is also classified as a Bortle Scale 2. It is very, very dark. But here's the thing. Not totally. Even there, in the middle of this lava field, many, many miles from any major cities, I could still see the faint glow of the horizon. I have to admit, it was kind of crushing. This was supposed to be the best of the best, and still not true dark. To really achieve the void I want, the only option might be to go out to sea. 300 miles from the coast, the curvature of the earth swallows
That's
up
also
the
true.
countless lights of the land. To sail out there on a moonless night and turn off all the lights of the boat might give the kind of darkness even craters of the moon couldn't deliver.
Nah, that's some
Not the
Dexter
black
shit
of the
right there.
underground,
That's some
but that
Dexter
of the
shit.
universe itself. There's a fact about light pollution that's always stuck with me, though. Emissions, wastewater, litter, most kinds of pollution stick around. Even if you completely stopped all air or water pollution tomorrow, we'd still be dealing with its current leftovers for millennia. But not light. You turn off all the lights, a power line trips, 9 very specific substations go down, and the skies return to their primeval darkness at literally the speed that light travels away from Earth. We would instantly be thrown back to the same skies seen by the earliest of our species. The dark is never that far away. On January 24th, 1925, a man named Alvin Peterson stood a little bit closer to the darkness than anyone else. On that day, Saturday, millions gathered in a curved arc across the US to watch the moon completely occlude the sun. It was a solar eclipse, one with a path of totality that started in Minnesota and raced to the Atlantic Ocean, passing directly through the center of New York City. And above New York, on top of an airship over 600 feet long, stood Alvin Peterson.
Yeah,
He
but
was the
eclipses
Navy's best
still
aerial
have
photographer
luminosity.
and had been assigned a job no one had ever had before. He was to film the total eclipse. Peterson stood on top of the Zeppelin for over 2 hours, cranking specially treated film through his camera. The temperature never climbed above freezing. Frostbite swiftly spread across his fingers and cheeks, but these externalities paled in comparison to his experience of the dark. John Dvorak writes that at the moment of the eclipse, the world essentially stopped existing for Peterson. The great silver expanse of the airship disappeared beneath his feet. Although he was a mile above the ground, he stopped feeling the vibrations and movement of the craft. Nearly the entire population of New York watched from below, but Peterson stood alone in the night that had fallen at 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning. The film he shot of the eclipse didn't turn out. I don't really mind. Peterson, along with the whole crew of the Zeppelin, was sent up that morning because eclipses are a remarkable opportunity for scientific discovery. In 1925, scientists used the new infrastructure of the telegraph to measure the speed of the moon's shadow across the Earth, 3,500 miles per hour. 6 years earlier, photographs taken of stars surrounding the sun, visible only during the totality
It's like the speed
of
of
a
a
solar
bullet.
eclipse, confirmed that they were in the wrong place. That is, the sun was in fact bending light around it. This was a phenomenon suggested by a 40-year-old physicist named Albert Einstein. Following this discovery, the Times published a quiet piece called "Revolution in Science: New Theory of the Universe, Newtonian Ideas Overthrown." It was, effectively, confirmation of Einstein's theory of general relativity. The article stated, "Our conceptions of the fabric of the universe must be fundamentally altered. Minutes of darkness changed our idea of the cosmos forever."
What?
Sorry, I got you guys.
Yet somehow, this still isn't my favorite way eclipses have sculpted our view of the world. Human-kept history does not have a consistent calendar. Across thousands of years of civilization, we have not carefully cross-referenced our date-keeping, nor made sure that our scales of time remained consistent. Knowing a precise date from millennia ago is near impossible, even with modern science like carbon dating. To weld together disparate records from the span of all cultures, you'd need some unignorable event that occurred at some immovable point in time. Something like darkness falling in the middle of the day. If humans were sentient and able to record events, they recorded the eclipse. John Dvorak writes, "How do we know that Julius Caesar was born on July 13th, 100 BCE and died on March 15th, 44 BCE? Or that Confucius died in 479 BCE? Or that Buddha died 4 years earlier? It is by combining chronological references found in ancient sources with the precision of astronomical calculations to determine absolute dates, and eclipses are the cornerstones of these calculations. The date of an eclipse, any eclipse within human history, is predictable forwards and backwards. We know when an eclipse will occur 100 years from now, and we also know when one occurred 100 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 10,000. It is, in fact, this celestial dark that has illuminated history. From the date of an eclipse, the timing of countless other events can be extrapolated. The light is obscured, but the past is exposed. Furthermore, this style of date tracking reveals even more about the physics of our universe. For instance, in Babylon, on April 15th, 136 BCE, multiple recordings document a total solar eclipse, including the time of the sun's occlusion and the specific planets visible during the dark. When the date of this eclipse was first calculated in the modern era, scientists were confused. Yes, there was an eclipse on April 15th, 136 BCE, but it should have fallen over Morocco, not Babylon. What happened? The dark understands more about our planet than we do. What happened is that both the Earth and the Moon are not the same as they were 2,100 years ago. The Earth, very gradually over time, is lending its momentum to the Moon's orbit. In other words, the Moon is orbiting very slightly faster than when that eclipse fell. The Earth, in return, is rotating very slightly slower. You put those two calculations into your model, and the trajectory of the dark across the Earth in 136 BCE shifts a few thousand miles. Just enough.
Yeah, that makes
blacken the
sense.
skies of Babylon. We want to make sense of the dark, to see into it and understand it, to shift our knowledge of entire celestial bodies to unravel its obscurity. Sometimes we've found what was waiting to be discovered in the dark. Sometimes it remains impenetrable. As I sit filming this, talking to you, my little camera is struggling to perceive the dark. Before I started filming, I set the ISO for the video, basically deciding my camera's sensitivity to light. Normally, I film at the lowest ISO I can manage, 200 or below. I set up big lights mere feet from my face to achieve this. I haven't done that today. I'm filming at 51,200 ISO. Doing this allows me to sit in much darker darkness while I talk to you. It also invites something else into the frame. Cameras don't see the dark, not really. There are light-emitting photons in this room and everywhere else, photons that are hitting the camera's sensor and being turned into digital signals that will eventually resolve into the image that you're seeing now. In a nice light environment with a properly adjusted sensor, those digital signals are translated into a clear, sharp, detailed picture. I'm not in a nice light environment, though. I'm here in the dark. My camera is simply not getting enough data to perfectly render this video. Its attempts to make sense of the insufficient data is resulting in something else: digital noise. It might be assigning too much intentionality to say that, like us, cameras hallucinate in darkness. But the artifacts of the dark that show up on both physical and digital film represent what the camera sees when there is not enough light to truly see. Just like us, they are uneasy in the dark, the ever-present photons assuring the camera that there is a something there, while not giving it enough information to tell it what. This is almost the entire hook of Kyle Edward Ball's 2022 movie Skinamarink, an impressively viewer-hostile piece of horror filmmaking. Skinamarink takes place within one house in 1995. Two kids awake to find their parents have disappeared, as have their house's doors and windows.
Hell
But this narrative
no.
isn't really what the movie is about. The camera, often set as high as 100,000 ISO, refuses to focus on the children. Instead, it stares into the dark corners of the house, the shadows on the ceiling, the feeble glow of a nightlight, the black spilling over the top of the stairs. And these shots, which are agonizingly long and still, become about their noise. The camera's inability to penetrate the dark, paired with heavy VHS static.
Why did it look like something was moving?
In the depths of the house, the viewer and the camera are placed in the same position, staring into nothing, desperately trying to find an image, a pattern, anything in the void. I'm suddenly in my childhood bedroom again, looking down the dark of the stairs, thinking of the two possibilities. There is nothing there. There is something there. In the film's most terrifying
I thought I was
scene,
gonna
one
get
of the
jump
children
scared.
braves the smothering darkness of the second floor and finds her way into her parents' room, where, unexpectedly, her father is actually sitting on the bed. But he doesn't offer any comfort. He doesn't even look at her. Digital noise swims unceasingly around the frame. Eventually, he speaks. Look under the bed. And the camera bends down to find an even deeper dark. On page 465 of the book House of Leaves, the book itself, a book called House of Leaves, appears in the narrative. It is one of
That
the
might be a
last
comp watch,
possessions
though.
held by one of the book's protagonists, Will Navidson. The book exists to be burned. House of Leaves is a book about a house that contains an insurmountable amount of dark. Appearing first in Navidson's life as a wall that refuses to be measured, and then as a space-defying hallway, the house eventually grows into an unknowable void, a terrestrial portal to an infinite vacuum. And the house doesn't just swallow those who literally inhabit it. House of Leaves, as a complete work, documents all the lives that have been somehow consumed by the house's dark, physically, academically, emotionally. But no one is more entangled than Navidson. He is so inextricably pulled to the abyss that he ventures into the house's depths with no expectation or hope of ever leaving it. And at the end of his journey, when there is nowhere else to go and nowhere to return to, he is left in the dark with two things: a book, House of Leaves, and a box of matches. The book is 736 pages long. He tears the first page out and sets it ablaze. In the 2021 adventure game Genesis Noir, the protagonist, a man wandering through space and time in a vain attempt to prevent the future, is sucked into a black hole. The rest of the game vanishes beyond the event horizon. All he's left with are his memories, represented by a number of items collected over the course of the game. All those and a box of matches. He sits in the dark, striking each and letting them burn down until he's left with a single one match in his collection of memories. After a moment of consideration, he lets the flame consume them all. In the finale of Ralph Ellison's seminal 1952 novel Invisible Man, the protagonist falls through a manhole into a pile of coal dust and is subsequently sealed inside. He cannot see, cannot move the manhole cover, cannot feel anything except the presence of the briefcase he's hauled through his entire journey. That and a boundless expanse of dust. It's a kind of death without hanging, he thinks, a death alive. He sleeps, wakes, stumbles through the void, and he finds something. A matchbook with 3 matches left. He opens his briefcase, which contains his high school diploma, memoirs of the past, the letters that eventually ended him in this coal bin. Each item, no matter how sentimental or bitter, serves one final purpose. They burn. In each of these works, the fire the protagonists spark in the darkness represents a sort of freedom, a fiery cleanse that separates them from the prior burdens of the plot. They each emerge on the other side of the dark more clear-eyed than when they entered, but personal growth doesn't remove the horror of their circumstances. The characters encounter the abyss, they lose themselves within it, and in the face of true dark, they gather the pieces of their own self-definition, everything by which they identify themselves, and they burn them until there's nothing left. We're back to Flamini in the cave. The solitude, the social uprooting, it consumes you. Or to put it a better way, you consume yourself. And yet, without darkness, there is no us.
Oh my god.
What are you doing? REM sleep can only properly happen in darkness. In too much light, Jacqueline Yallop writes, our REM duration is reduced or removed completely. Deprived of darkness, our dreams are vapid, too slight to restore or refresh, too insipid to matter. Will Hunt writes of the many luminaries of our species that found prolonged exposure to the dark a necessary component of their most radical
I didn't know
ideas.
that.
Pythagoras and Da Vinci, Muhammad.
Can you not actually REM in like really bright places? That's interesting.
Elijah. Their journeys without light played a part in the ideas that defined them, the space, again, to dream. I think about the nearly impossible relationship we have with the light and the dark. Not only has our whole circadian rhythm been sculpted around the oscillations of day and night, but this extends to our precise celestial position and context. Nowhere else in the solar system, John Dvorak writes, can you stand on solid ground and watch a moon blot out the sun. Furthermore, even the Earth will not get to witness this forever. In each moment, the moon moves imperceptibly farther from us. One day, after hundreds of millions of years, it won't be close enough to cover the sun's glow. We exist in the only place, at the only time, where we could witness this exact phenomenon. The point farthest on Earth from a consistent human-made light is likely Point Nemo. It is the most remote place on the planet, a position in the middle of the South Pacific, more than 1,500 miles from any land, a point so void and empty that, as many writers have pointed out, anyone unlucky enough to occupy Point Nemo would be closer to astronauts.
This is actually weird because like I just been getting like a bunch of TikToks like yesterday about Point Nemo. I don't know why, but I just get curious of this stuff.
Aboard the ISS than any human on land. It is, says Cullen Murphy, the anti-Everest. It beckons because nothing is there. On June 13th, 2113, a solar eclipse's path of totality will pass directly over Point Nemo. The moon will, for 1 minute and 35 seconds, plunge the darkness of space directly into the darkness of Earth. In all likelihood, no one will be there to see it. The waves were dead, the tides were in their graves, the moon their mistress.
Their mistress had expired before. The winds were withered in the stagnant air, and the clouds perished.
Darkness had no need
Tarnished
from them. She was the universe. Anyone writing about the dark inevitably finds themselves writing about death. It is, maybe, the only place you can end up. The final darkness, the end of all our metaphors, our fears of dying boiled down to the same simple dichotomy. There's nothing there, or there's something there.
Damn.
After all, isn't that what people report when they feel themselves dying? We focus on the moving towards a light, but that destination only exists because they're moving through the dark, through a tunnel, a cave, a basement, an ocean. I was moving through this long, dark place. It seemed like a sewer. I was in an utterly black, dark void. I had the feeling that I was moving through a deep, very dark valley. I don't know what happens after you die. I don't know what happens while you're dying. But throughout writing this, I keep having this thought, this dream of an astronaut, somehow thrown into intergalactic space, the barren distance between galaxies, the truest void that exists. I think about how you would still be able to see the stars, or rather you would see entire galaxies as single points of light, but that light would share no illumination. You would look down at your body and see nothing. You would move your hand over your face, and the galaxies would disappear behind your own darkness. That dark would be the only way you could recognize yourself. There's nothing there. There's something there.
There's something there. Behind you. Right behind you. Joking. Joking.
Does not obliterate, will not bury you, or take your breath away. Darkness will not erase you the way it erases day with night, because darkness is not the clock, but merely time.
Yeah. Hey.
Falling away from the clock.
Okay, but what actually is this? Oh, it's a whole credit. Okay, fair enough. That's the whole video. That was a good video. That was a good video. If you are watching this at 3 a.m., make sure to drop a like. I hope this didn't scare you too much. Behind you! I'm joking. But yeah. That was Fear of the Goddamn. That was Fear of the Dark. That was Fear of the Dark. Honestly, I think once I got to like 14, 15 years old, I didn't really get that scared of the dark anymore. Low key, I'd almost challenge myself, like on some psycho shit. I'd challenge myself just to go downstairs to see if anyone was there. Yet again, do not do what I do. Because if there's actually someone there, like, you're screwed. You are the first person to die in a horror movie. I admit it, I'm going to be the first one to die in a horror movie, but I'm not scared. But yeah, dude. That's how you beat the dark. You just gotta run headfirst at it. That demon that follows you up the stairs when you're going to bed after getting like some chalky milk and a cookie. You gotta like stop on the stairs, turn around and walk at it. What's he gonna do? Walk away? Good, fair enough, good enough, you know what I mean? Disappear? He's no longer there. But if you run away, he's gonna run at you.